Now let me introduce to you Mike Bessire of Midland, Texas. Mr. Bessire was a successful business executive in Texas, Maryland, and the District of Columbia, who retired to West Texas. He bought, as an educated investor, Enron stock in May of 2000 with the encouragement of his stockbroker, Mr. Bessire.
Good morning. As Bob said, my name is Mike Bessire. I live in Midland, Texas, and I lost money on Enron stock as a private investor. I was not an Enron employee, but I worked in the retail food and drug industry for over 30 years, and most recently I retired from Starbucks Coffee Company about 2 years ago. My involvement in this action began after the collapse of Enron, and after seeing how many lives had been devastated by Enron's bankruptcy, especially the employees. As more information began to surface, I felt I must get involved in this process for philosophical reasons. You can't live in Texas and not know people that were affected to the degree of Charlie and many other employees. As a matter of fact, my wife's roommate in college, her boyfriend that she eventually married, and they moved to Houston, the only job he ever had was with Enron. And I still remember the day my wife received a call from her. And not only was he without a job, he'd lost his life savings, and they were starting from scratch with their 3 children at age 45. You know, where do you turn? So, as I said, the philosophy on this really touched me in a great way. I believed 6 years ago, almost 6 years ago, that a huge intentional deception took place. I believed then that individual greed and dishonesty by executives at Enron, as well as at many other financial institutions, reached a level that the American public had never seen before. I wanted to be a part of taking a stand and to see a ruling that would be so grave as to provide true disincentives for anyone to ever think of doing this again. Tens of thousands of people outside the scope of just employees had their lives altered forever. If you fast forward to the present, what I believed happened almost 6 years ago is really now a matter of fact. 34 Enron executives have in fact pleaded guilty to a multiple of criminal charges. A record $7.3 billion in settlement from numerous financial institutions has already been collected, and millions of pages of testimony and documents, including emails on these frank discussions of these illegal activities, are already a matter of record. I actually owned Enron stock that was purchased by a broker that had discretionary authority to buy and sell in an account that I had in May of 2000. He purchased 125 shares of Enron stock at $74. In February of 2001, as I reviewed my statement, it was trading at $68 and Enron was already in the headlines. I recall talking to my stockbroker and him assuring me that, Mike, this is a $100 stock waiting to happen. Don't be concerned. As I did research on my own, I also recall in January and February of that year that Ken Lay was very visible in the media. I recall him on television boasting of a deal with Blockbuster Video and how they were going this venture into on-demand video. I also remember him giving us reassurances and talking about how successful their broadband venture was setting up at the time. But by July of 2001, Lay had already recanted the Blockbuster Video and the broadband venture. As we know now, those were lies and those transactions never even took place. In July, the stock was trading at $46. I called my stockbroker, once again gained reassurances that this was a $100 stock and a temporary setback. I told him I'd be more comfortable if we sold the stock and took the loss at that time. When I received my August statement, I noticed that we still owned our Enron stock and the statement price was $35. I picked up the phone and called him that day in September, asked him what it was trading at. It was $26 that day. I told him to sell it while we were on the phone and tell me what we collected for the stock and give me a confirmation. So we sold it at $26.03. I lost right at $6,000 on this transaction, but the point is I shouldn't have had to lose a penny because that loss was incurred by dishonesty and corruption. But $6,000 loss, I was one of the lucky ones. When I was in business in this area, I worked in this area for 8.5 years as president of Safeway's Eastern Division, and I believed in doing what was right for all stakeholders, not just stockholders or executives. Decisions were made based on what was right for employees, for customers, for shareholders, for suppliers, and for the communities. I believe right now the entire country is the stakeholder in this current action. I believe that there are 6 financial institutes that still have not settled, and clearly they need to be held accountable. What we're asking for today is the support of the SEC so that they will help us in securing a ruling with the Supreme Court that will allow us to go to trial with these 6 remaining financial institutes in order to make an example out of them, number one. Number 2, to deliver the disincentives for future actions of this type. And number 3, to gain additional recovery to help the honest and hardworking people, especially the employees that like Charlie that lost everything, who had so much to lose and actually deserved to take part in some of this recovery. Thank you.